So the next nerve, the spinal accessory nerve. So this one. So the spinal accessory nerve, it is the 11th cranial nerve and it is purely motor nerve. And it consists of the two roots, that is the cranial and the spinal. So here you can see that is the cranial root, red color, and green color, that is the spinal root. So the cranial root that should be originate from the part of the brain, and the spinal root that should be originate from the spinal cord. So the cranial root is accessory to that the vagus, and its fiber are distributed throughout the vagus nerve. And the spinal root has independent course, and generally it is regarded as a spinal accessory nerve. Then the functional component and the nuclei of the spinal accessory nerve. So first, that is the special visceral efferent fiber. So as it is the motor, so it has only the efferent fiber. So its special visceral efferent fiber, it provide the motor supply to the muscles of the soft palate, the pharynx, the larynx, and it arises from the nucleus of amblygus, which forming that the cranial root, red color. Then the general somatic efferent fibers. So it provide the motor supply to the sternocleidomastoid muscle and the trapezius muscle. So here you can see green color. They arise from the spinal nucleus of the accessory nerve in the ventral horn of the upper spinal segment. So here you can see that is the upper spinal segments and form the spinal rootlets. After then, the course and the relation of the spinal accessory nerve. So here you can see that is the red and the green color, that is the spinal accessory nerve root. So the cranial root, that is the red color root, here you can see. So it arises from 4 or 5 rootlets from the posterolateral sulcus of the medulla oblongata between the olive and the inferior cerebellar peduncle. The rootlets is attached with the rootlets of the vagus nerve. Then the spinal root, that is the green color root. So here, so it arises by a number of rootlets from the lateral aspect of the spinal cord. Here you can see that is the upper cervical segments, along with that is the vertical line between ventral and dorsal roots of the spinal nerve, and the rootlets unite to form a single trunk which ascends in the vertebral canal, enter through the cranial cavity through the foramen magnum. So here that the foramen magnum. Then the spinal root, it leaves the skull through the jugular foramen. So here that is the jugular foramen, this one. Includes the dural sheath along with the vagus nerve. So here in this diagram you can see that is, this is the vagus nerve, this one, that is the cranial root, and this is the spinal root. So here, so that is the spinal root leads to the skull through the jugular foramen. So here you can see that is the jugular foramen, where it fuses with the cranial root of the spinal accessory nerve. So here you can see that is the two roots, they should be fused with each other, and combined trunk comes out of the cranial cavity through the middle compartment of the jugular foramen and enclosing the dural sheath along with the vagus nerve. And as whenever it comes out throughout that the jugular foramen, immediately it should be again separated that the both root. Out of this, the cranial root, it joins with that is the inferior ganglion of the vagus nerve, and the spinal root, it descends downwards. So as the cranial root, it joins with that the inferior ganglia of the vagus nerve, so it branches supply with the vagus nerve to the muscles of palate, pharynx and the larynx. So this one. Then the spinal root, it descends vertically downwards between the internal jugular vein and the internal carotid artery, and then it pierces the sternocleidomastoid muscle at the junction of upper 1/4 and the lower 3/4 of the muscle and supplies to that the muscle. Then this nerve is enters into that the posterior triangle and parallel to that the levator scapulae muscle. Then it leaves the posterior triangle by passing deep to the anterior border of the trapezius, and the spinal accessory nerve is communicate with the C2, C3 and C4 spinal nerve. Out of these, the C2 and C3 spinal nerve carry the proprioceptive fibers from the sternocleidomastoid, while the C3 and C4 carry proprioceptive fibers from the trapezius muscle. So here in this diagram you can see that is this nerve, spinal accessory nerve, that is supply to that the sternocleidomastoid muscle and the trapezius muscle. So this one. Then the distribution, that is the cranial root, this one, that is the red color of the accessory nerve via the vagus nerve and the pharyngeal plexus of the nerves supplies to the all muscles of the palate. Then all muscles of the pharynx and all intrinsic muscles of the larynx, and that is the spinal root of accessory nerve, it supplied that is the two muscles, that is the sternocleidomastoid muscle along with the C2 and C3 spinal nerves and the trapezius muscle along with C3 and C4 spinal nerve. After then, let's see that is the lesion of the spinal accessory nerve. So it may be occurs or damaged by the fracture of the base of the skull through the jugular foramen or the stab wound, or during the surgical removal of the cervical lymph nodes. So it can occurs the ipsilateral paralysis of the sternocleidomastoid muscle with the result that the patient is unable to tilt his head towards the ipsilateral shoulder and unable to turn his face towards the opposite side. Then second one, that is the paralysis of the trapezius with result that the patient is unable to strung his shoulder against the resistance. So second clinical point, that is the spasmodic torticollis. So it may result from the irritative central lesion of the spinal accessory nerve, and it can shows the symptom, that is the clonic spasm of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. The next clinical point, the clinical testing of the spinal accessory nerve. So in this, the sternocleidomastoid muscle is tested by asking patient to turn his face to the opposite against the resistance. Then the trapezius muscle can be tested by asking patient to shrug his shoulder against the resistance. So in this way, that is the clinical testing of the spinal accessory nerve that should be done. So next to it, that is the hypoglossal nerve. So this one. So the hypoglossal nerve, it is the 12th cranial nerve and it is purely motor. The functional component and the nuclei of the hypoglossal nerve, that is general somatic efferent fibers. So this fiber arises from the hypoglossal nucleus and supply to the all muscles of the tongue, that includes the extrinsic and the intrinsic muscles of the tongue, which develop from the occipital myotomes. So in the another diagram you can see. So here you can see that is the hypoglossal nucleus. This is the pyramid of the medulla oblongata, and between this, that is the hypoglossal nucleus is arises, and then it gives that is general somatic efferent fibers. So here which is give to that the muscle of the tongue. Then the course and the relations of the hypoglossal nerve. So here in this diagram you can see this is. So the course and the relations of the hypoglossal nerve. So here you can see that is the yellow color hypoglossal nerve, and that is the other root, that is from the C1. So the hypoglossal nerve, it should be arises from the ventral aspect of the medulla, from the anterolateral sulcus between the pyramid and the olive, forming the 10 to 15 rootlets. So here you can see that is the 10 to 15 rootlets. The rootlets of the hypoglossal nerve are attached in the line with the rootlets of the ventral root of the first cervical spine. So this one, that is the C1 spinal nerve. Then the rootlets of the hypoglossal nerve runs laterally and passes behind the vertebral artery to form, that is the two rootlets. So here it should be formed, that is the two roots, and these two roots then again joins with each other before piercing, that is the hypoglossal canal. So here, so after piercing throughout the hypoglossal canal with the C1 spinal nerve, then it lies deep to that the internal carotid artery. Then it passes downwards and laterally and goes in between the internal jugular vein and the internal carotid artery, and then it passes again laterally and supply to the muscles of the intrinsic and the extrinsic muscles of the tongue, except the palatoglossus muscle. Then the branches and the distribution of the hypoglossal nerve. So first, that is the branches of the hypoglossal proper nerve. So they supply the muscles of tongue except the palatoglossus, which is supplied by the cranial root of this accessory via the pharyngeal plexus. Then the second, branches of the hypoglossal nerve containing, that is the C1 fiber. So here that is the thin fiber which are seen, this one. So first, that is the meningeal branch. Then these branches include, first, that is this is the meningeal branch. So this one, which is arises from the C1 spinal nerve. So it arises from the nerve, it comes out through the hypoglossal canal, taking recurrent course and enters into that the cranial cavity through that the hypoglossal nerve. Then second one, that is descends the hypoglossus or forming the upper root of the ansa cervicalis. So here you can see it descends downwards one branch, this one, and forming the branch of ansa cervicalis. Then the third branch, here you can see that is the nerve to the thyroid, this one. And fourth one, that is nerve to that the genoid, so this one. So four branches which is formed by the roots coming out from the C1 spinal nerve. One is the meningeal branch, second one that is forming the part of the ansa cervicalis, then third one the nerve to that the thyroid, and fourth one that is the nerve to that the genoid muscle. Then let's see that is the clinical application related with the hypoglossal nerve. Then the first clinical point, that is the lesion of the hypoglossal nerve. So if the hypoglossal nerve is cut on the one side, so there will be lower motor type of the paralysis of the muscles of the tongue. Then when asking the patient to protrude out the tongue, the tip of the tongue deviates the paralyzed side due to the unopposed action of the muscles of the healthy side. Then second clinical point, that is the supranuclear lesion. So it include the upper motor type of paralysis. So in this there will be tongue is affected on the same site where the affected nerve should be occurs, and the mucous membrane will show wrinkling due to that the wasting of the muscle and their fasciculations. Then next clinical point, that is the clinical testing of the hypoglossal nerve. So the patient is asked to protrude the tongue, and if the hypoglossal nerve of the both sides are intact, then protrude the tongue in the midline. But if the hypoglossal nerve is paralyzed on one side or one side damaged, so the tongue deviates to the side of the lesion. And if the hypoglossal nerve of the both sides are damaged, then patient cannot be protrude out its tongue. So the motionless in the mouth, causing difficulty in the speech and the swallowing. So these are the clinical symptoms related with the lesion of the hypoglossal nerve.